under long-standing department policy, a president cannot be charged with a federal crime while he is in office. That is unconstitutional. Even if the charge is kept under seal and hidden from public view, that too is prohibited. The special counsel's office is part of the Department of Justice, and by regulation, it was bound by that department policy. Charging the president with a crime was therefore not an option we could consider.
No prosecution, didn't even set out to make a case for prosecution. They found things, 10 written instances of President Trump possibly committing the crime of obstruction, but because of department policy, they never considered prosecuting. Alex Little now, criminal defense attorney, former assistant U.S. attorney. Alex, good to see you.
Good afternoon.
Does that policy necessarily stand as the last word, or was that interpretive on his part?
No, I think it shows you a couple things about Bob Mueller. One is that he follows the rules. This was not somebody who was going to come in, challenge that guidance, and try to get an arm of the Department of Justice to indict the president. I think today was a pretty clear indication that his whole work has been trying to discover the facts and let other folks deal with those facts. And today, you know, he's put that directly in the hands of Congress.
Yeah, and you mentioned, and I thought was insightful, that today, and not including the American people, there were two specific audiences today.
Yeah, the first audience had to be congressional Democrats. He's telling them, listen, I'm not going to testify. I don't want to testify. If you drag me in front of the cameras, I'm basically going to say exactly what I said today. It's in the report. You can read it. I'm not going to go outside the bounds. So he's telling congressional Democrats he's not their savior. At the same time, he's telling congressional Republicans, you need to read the report. You need to see the very serious things that I uncovered, and you need to do your constitutional duty. And that may be impeaching the president, may not be, but I think he's pretty perturbed that there's been no further sort of action by Congress.
Well, weirdly, he had already said all of that. I read it. I know he said it. I read it.
Yeah, it's in the report, and it's sort of one of these things. It's like a college professor giving a lecture to the kids that he knows didn't do the reading themselves. He was reiterating, I think, very specific about what he talked about today. He pointed out things that were, I think, at odds with what the Attorney General had said, specifically around why he didn't choose to make a determination that the president had committed a crime. And he focused on, you know, the real evidence he saw of a concerted effort by the Russians to influence the election, and to do it specifically to help the president at the detriment of then-candidate Clinton.
He says that he's about to leave, which makes sense as his work is now complete. He further says that he shouldn't be testifying before Congress, that this should be the last word. Okay, work with me. Scene. Mueller has left the DOJ. He's now a private citizen. Can the Congress subpoena him and compel him to testify under oath?
They can sure try to do both those things. I think just because he's left the office doesn't mean that Congress is still not bound by the fact that they're asking him to testify about things that happened when he was in office. They're asking him to testify about his official actions. So that's going to have to go through the Department of Justice. If the Department of Justice objects, I don't think the special counsel is going to kind of overrule those objections and decide himself that he's a private citizen and testify. So this is going to end up in court, just like the other objections that have been lodged so far against congressional testimony.
New scene. The decision has been made that he will testify. While he is testifying, he's asked, Mr. Former Special Prosecutor, in the absence of the directive from the Department of Justice and the rules that say you couldn't prosecute, in the absence of that, would you have prosecuted Donald Trump for obstruction of justice? Can they ask him that and compel him to answer?
They can ask him that. There is not a universe in which this special counsel, Robert Mueller, would answer that question. He's going to say it's a hypothetical, and he's not going to answer it. I think what he's doing here is putting the focus. It doesn't matter what his answer is. It matters what the congressional answer is. He said, here are the facts. If you want to know the facts, what the president did, I've laid them out. You, Congress, now need to make a determination of whether that's a high crime and a misdemeanor. And he's not going to give folks the easy way out. I don't think the special counsel is ever going to answer that hypothetical.
Because, as he put it, that's not how this works in America. There's a system.
That's right. We have a Constitution. It says that when there's a president who's been accused of misconduct, that goes through Congress. That doesn't mean there has to be impeachment. He doesn't have to get kicked out of office. But when they open an impeachment inquiry, I think there are very different things that could happen. Could he testify as part of an impeachment inquiry? That's possible. That's a different question. But I think until that happens, you're not going to see any movement from Robert Mueller or anybody else on his team.
You said here after the release of the Mueller report that those 10, some say 11, depends on how you look at it, instances of obstruction of justice are evidence of a crime.
Absolutely.
Given that, if the Congress then is not able to come up with a process for impeachment, are we now left in a position where a future president of the United States can have committed crimes, and if the politics are such that his people or her people are in charge on Capitol Hill, that there would be no remedy for those who saw themselves above the law?
That's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, the law ultimately is about what we, the people, allow to happen. You know, as a prosecutor, I only had power because there were police officers who would effectuate arrest warrants and judges who would sign orders that would put people in jail. But it took people to actually carry out those pieces of paper and make them real. And if Congress is not going to carry out the instructives of the Constitution, we don't have much chance. I mean, what Representative Amash said yesterday at his town hall, I think, was really instructive, that if Congress is not willing to at least look into a president of their own party and see if there's wrongdoing, then it's really lost its bearings. And we have a real constitutional crisis on our hands. And the crisis isn't structural, it's personal.
Alex Little, thank you.
Thank you.
So, for the moment, put aside that part and focus, as Robert Mueller seemed to try to do today, on the matter of Russian interference.